Inspire and motivate your audience. Find exactly what you are looking for by working closely with us to assist you in understanding the cost-benefit analysis tied to selecting a speaker for any event. Ensure that your audience is educated, engaged, and empowered. Connect with us for a quick response and tailored advice. Book your speakers now.
Do you have an all-star HR team? You may feel your team is already performing at a high level, but let's take a closer look. Would your company's top leaders and employees agree that your HR team are operating at a high level? Are team members able to influence top executives on difficult topics? Are team members' business and strategy focused on the challenges the organization is facing? Does the executive team trust your direct reports as advisors on human capital issues? If you can answer yes to these questions, you have built an outstanding team. If you feel there is room for improvement, Strategy Focused Group can create a custom development program to elevate the quality of your HR team. We use HCI certification programs as well as non-certified HRBP MBA Masterclass to give your team a laser focus on the business and strategy. Please email us at info@strategyfocusedgroup.com.
Good morning, good evening, depending upon what part of the world you're in. If it's Friday, you know it's the CEO series, where we bring together global leaders, entrepreneurs, innovators, disruptors, educators, you name it. We have those people here. Today, our guest is Nicholas Watson, who is the CEO and co-founder of UDrive, based in Dubai, as well as other expansion plans, which we'll talk about. 20-year career in leading teams, developing products, and building an on-ground presence, India, Africa, the Middle East, and US, across multiple sectors. He leverages his experience to shape and propel business forward. So with that, I welcome my friend, Nick. How you doing, man?
I'm good, thank you very much.
Glad you're here. So you're in Germany now. Okay, cool, right?
Just for a couple of days, yes.
Just for a couple of days. Okay, cool. So let's talk about this journey. Tell us about the UDrive. Give us the background story on UDrive.
So it's pretty organic. We started out as a normal car rental company where you rent the cars for a day or for a week or for a month. Over a couple of years, we started to realize that there were a lot of customers who we couldn't serve because we took deposits and you could rent the car by effectively one day only and above. And we said, look, there's got to be a better way. And of course, globally, on a global scale, you had Zipcar in the US and a couple of companies around the world. And we said, look, let's regionalize it, but let's do something different. Let's really fractionalize the rental down to 1 minute rather than 1 hour or 10-minute, 30-minute bookings. And let's give complete freedom. So no deposits, no friction. As long as you have a driver's license, you can effectively use it if you're allowed to rent a car in the UAE. And that was it. We took the old school car rental cars and we digitized them. We made an app and then we published it, and we went viral from that moment on. So you can effectively rent the car from 1 minute and only pay for 1 dirham or like literally one unit of time.
Yeah. So for the people that don't understand it, I rented a car to go to a wedding a few weeks ago, and I had to get it back by 11:30 that morning. Otherwise, it goes into another day's rental. So
yes,
renting by the minute, I mean, that saved me a full day's rental, over $100 and some US dollars.
Yeah, look, if you would, depending on how you were using the car, if you kept it for 23 hours, you would have paid for 23 hours.
Yeah.
But in actual fact, we cap it. So after approximately 3 to 4 hours, you don't pay anymore for the rest of the day. And then if you do go into the next billing day, you pay by the minute again, up to the next 3 or 4 hours of usage.
So how was that once you started that? How did you market that new concept? Because people, we tend to get locked into a mindset that says rental per day. How much is it per day? And you're saying, no, rental per minute, or however long you're going to use it.
Well, I think it's, in the end, if you look at the cost of renting a car for the day, you're paying for the lack of somebody else not renting it. So the company needs to make money for the day on that car. So it takes it and you're just the one person holding the bag, right? If you can divide it into smaller blocks and then rent to multiple people, then an accumulative group of people can basically pay for that vehicle's asset cost for the day. So if you track back, if you've got a 15-minute journey and you're renting the car for the day, but you're only using it for 60 minutes, then technically you're paying for the other minutes you're not using.
Exactly.
So all we did was say, look, you just pay for what you use. And if you do want to go longer, then you can go longer, and we'll maximum cap you, which is almost always with UDrive. We're cheaper than a normal daily rental car anyway, even if you do start by the minute. And we include petrol, and we include parking, and you have full insurance. So there's like no hidden stuff in it. You just get in the car and drive.
Okay. So is that through an app, or I come into the airport? What's the model look like?
You download an app wherever you are in the world, which is on the App Store and the Play Store, and you submit your driver's license. You get approved to operate and use the service, and then you can be in the UK and you get on a plane. You arrive in Dubai. You go to your hotel. You look at the map. You check to see where the cars are. You rent the car from your room, and then you get out of your hotel room. You walk to the car. You open it. No humans involved, and drive wherever you want, and then park wherever you want, and end the trip wherever you want on the per minute basis.
Yeah, in my apartment in Dubai, I can look out of my window, and because a lot of the people from Emirates Airlines live there, they were always your cars parked in front there. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Everything from the Nissan Sunnies to the Mustangs.
So the Mustangs, yeah, it was Mustangs that were there. Walk us through when we first met years ago, and you guys were my first client when I moved to Dubai. You went from a corporate role to becoming an entrepreneur. How did that happen? How did that happen?
Okay. Depending on how you take a corporate role, the best corporates are entrepreneurial in spirit, because a new product is effectively a new company within a big, rappy thing with lots of resources and stuff. The old business I worked on, every 3 to 6 months, we were innovating on product, issuing new products. So effectively, we were micro entrepreneurs within a big organization. I think moving into like building UDrive and working together with Hassi, who's the other co-founder, we leveraged our core skill sets, right? Which was, mine was scaling and processes and bringing in foreign knowledge into the organization, and his was being the rental car guy that just wanted to really change the world with old school rental into new rental, because I'm not an automotive guy. So I think that the skill sets worked really well. I come from corporate, but I don't come from automotive. I come from transport and logistics and other areas. So it wasn't hard for me to move from that world into this world, because effectively every year we're building new product anyway. So this is the same thing. The difference here is just heavily in technology. Yeah.
So just the product was different, and a different way, to approach that. So you mentioned globally. Where are you located now? I know you started in Dubai. I think you started in Dubai.
Yes, we started in Dubai. We grew into Abu Dhabi, Sharjah, the UAE. We are in Saudi Arabia now. We're going into other GC countries in the next 3 to 6 months. So things are going well. Obviously, we had to deal with COVID for the last 2 years. But yeah, other than that, we're in massive expansion, and probably within the next, I would say, 2 to 3 years, we'll be in pretty much most of the Middle East, North Africa, and Turkey.
Wow, that's amazing. From the initial time that we talked, and all this was kind of a dream, putting this together. So let's talk about execution. So I'm sure you run into a lot of people. Everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. Everybody has these ideas and all these kinds of things. Idea to execution and making it happen. Key points.
Oh God! Don't be the only one. Have a partner. Where it doesn't have to be a full-time partner. You have to like co-found something, but you need someone that basically fills your gaps. And that's not even a startup thing. That's just a general good practice whereby not everybody's great at everything. And the reality is, people that are super organized and super detailed orientated get stuck in the details. And people who are not detailed orientated, they sort of get stuck in high fly ideas that they can never see. They can't always execute. But the visionaries and the leaders who can dream of a future, they almost should recognize their strengths and weaknesses, and then hire people to surround them that fill those gaps. But you're in HR, so you know this inside and out, right? So.
Well, you know what? because I'm an entrepreneur too. So I understood that in starting out. I knew certain things I was awful. I'm horrible when it comes to details, and I have a young lady who does all. I don't even have to worry about those things. Ade, who you just met, is the executive producer of this show. I don't have to worry about it. I do what I do, they do what they do, and it makes a team. It makes a team. So trying to, but the challenge for that is for me to realize I'm not good at what I do. Whereas you find a lot of people, they want to do it all because they figure they have to be in control of it.
Yeah.
So is
but this is an experience thing. An experience, unfortunately, whether you like it or not, you're not born with it. You earn it and you live through it. And time almost always gives you that experience. So that's why, as you know, we're not the youngest people in the in the world, but we're not like in our graves yet. Our life experiences have led to the points in time where we wake up in the morning and go, yeah, I'm not good at this. I can learn how to do it and I can figure it out, but I'm not great at this. Like, jack of all trades is actually a very useful situation, because that's where I almost invariably found myself. But there are things that I can excel in. There are things that I just cannot, but I understand. And because I understand them, I know that I'm not good at it. And this is the problem. If you don't experience different parts of a business, whether it's sales, marketing, ideation, organization, operations, then it's very hard for you to know what you don't know. And that almost is invariably the downfall of most leaders, is the fact that they just tend not to want to know what they don't know.
Well, I read an article, it was basically some research, and was talking about entrepreneurs who built major companies. At a certain point in time, they realized that I need to step away because it's going to an area I'm not good at. I'm great at the visionary thing. I can do the big vision, but the execution pieces, putting the part, it's kind of, my conception has always been, it's kind of like putting a puzzle together. You need a skill set here, but it comes back to whether I can step back and realize that I have shortcomings as it relates to this. And sometimes for these visionary people, they feel they got it all.
I mean, I don't know any billionaire that did it on their own. So I mean, the only billionaires that might technically have done it on their own are the ones that went and bought Bitcoin really, really early, and they just rode it up, right? But I mean, that's more, let's call it strategic investment decisions.
Okay, that's a nice way. That's a nice way of putting it.
I mean, people call that luck and stuff like that, but in the end, were they lucky? They saw an opportunity, they jumped on it, and it was decisions they made. So, in the end, anybody could have bought crypto back then, and they didn't, because they weren't surrounded by the right network of people who knew about it. I think in the end, the ability to go from idea to execution is almost always founded on the fact that you believe what you're building is real or could be real, and that you find people to help you build that thing, because you can't do it on your own, especially if it's an operational business, very operational business as well.
So you mentioned COVID. Did COVID have an impact? Because I read an article that they said owning an automobile is the most underutilized asset. And I never forgot that, because if you think of owning a car, if you're commuting to work, you're getting up in the morning, you're driving the car to work, the car sits there for 8 hours, you get back in the car, drive back home, the car sits there until the next morning.
So look, let's be realistic. Your average car is, not a corporate car that's driving around doing deliveries and stuff. We're just talking about your average consumer-based vehicle is probably doing about an hour and a half a day, depending on where you live. But if you average it out, like my commute is 5 minutes, so there's probably 50 people like me, and then there's 50 people that are like 2-hour commutes, right? So if you average it out, it's going to work out to a lot less. The reason people buy cars and own them, there's two reasons. There's psychological reasons. I own a car, and I own my own car, no problem. That's what you do when you're 16. As you get older, you get less and less caring about those things, especially the things that they become less important to you. And then there's the financial benefit. So in reality, if the only way to get to work is buy a car, lease a car, or take a taxi, or take a bus, public transport, and it works out cheaper and let's say time-wise more convenient to own the car and pay a slight premium on top of a bus, then you're going to do that, right? Now, of course, if you depending on which category of economic bracket you're in, you will care about certain things in a different way. So, for example, $1 is more important than to one person than somebody else, or $10 and vice versa. So the reality is everybody's being brought up to own a car because that's what everybody did. And you had to own it because that was the only option. And then the world of leasing came in, but leasing was still primarily more expensive. But then people got more wise to the cost of owning a car, maintaining, repairing, whatever, on top of that ends up bleeding in. And actually leasing is not a bad deal. But at the end of your lease, you don't own the car unless it's a lease to own. So in the end, you're paying somewhere, but you're not paying on a monthly basis. You're paying at the end when you don't own the asset.
Exactly.
But you have no responsibility. And obviously, the whole world is moving away from ownership to usership. And so, like leasing, traditional leasing models are doing great. Fractional leasing, like what we do, or fractional rental, what we do, they're all doing well because the world is moving that way. So, and you get the conscious when you realize that your car sits for 22.5 hours a day.
That's right.
Doing nothing. It earns no money for you. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't mobilize anybody else on the planet. It's rotting, technically. It's aging. The time that it's sitting costs you more than the time you use it.
But you're still paying.
You're still paying the depreciation. You're still paying the insurance. The insurance isn't based on the time you're using it. The insurance is based on 24 hours a day, times by 365 days a year. So you're paying every second of the day. You think you're not, but you really are.
Okay. So I saw an ad when I was in US. I saw an ad that said that this new concept that if I flew into, say, Dallas or New York, I can rent a personal car from someone. It's when I saw the ad, I thought of the Airbnb of cars.
Correct.
Because if maybe I want to rent a convertible, and I'd rent a convertible from you because you got a convertible sitting there, all day for a couple of weeks. I rent it for a couple of days, and I got money coming in as a result of that. So that go ahead.
It's coming. The reason why historically it hasn't been around for 30 years is technology wasn't enabling it, right? And I think there's huge cultural change now in people as individuals, but also companies, that you don't have to always own something to have success. Almost everybody now is on telephone, pay by the minute, right? Okay, or buy one package, get all inclusive, right? Or the Netflix effect of everything, right? They're doing it on Tinder with girlfriends and boyfriends. It's just everything is on demand and everything's instant and everything's about having it when you want it, right? And I think in the case of P2P, all we're doing is we're maximizing the usage of an asset, but that asset is not owned by a company per se, or a company that's dedicated to taking these assets and giving it to other people. So the only thing that's really changed is it's like your mum and pop shop that decides to start baking goods in the kitchen, and then the oven's not being used for 24 hours a day, 23 hours a day. Let's bake some cookies for someone else and sell the cookies to them. It's the same thing. It's just using assets more wisely. It's just that technology is the enabler.
Well, I think you talk generationally. A younger generation is more connected to that than an older generation, because the older generation may have grown up with the mindset, I own a car, I pay a car note every month, and this is what I do. And that may be a little frightening. So if you think of future state, this is where it's all headed. Would you say that?
I agree with you 100%. I think there's also another thing. Humans are humans. And so if you own something and you think if you lend it to someone, they'll make it worth less than it was when you gave it to them, you're not going to do it, right? It's the same as you lending a car to your friend. You do think twice about, if there's a scratch, how am I going to get the money out of them, right? Or do I charge them? So this is a responsibility, and in the end, it's humans being humans. You'll just assume negativity of that person taking your asset, and if you don't know who they are and you've never met them in your life, it's even harder for you to conceptualize acceptance of that premise. But what happens is the companies like UDrive and the other companies out there, what we do is we say, look, don't worry about it. Anything happens, it's our responsibility.
Okay.
You'll get the car back the way you should have got it. And if there is an incident, you're covered, right? So yeah, and then you obviously generate an income, so you feel like it's worth the risk because you're going to make some money out of your asset.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because in the ad, a portion of that ad talked about the insurance and everything was going to be covered. Because, and I'm thinking, would I let somebody use my car? I don't know, but everything is going to be covered, as a result of that. So there was really no risk from my side.
No, I mean, look, let's be realistic. Like we did 38,000 rentals on 500 cars 2 months ago, right? In 1 month. Okay. So those cars are doing a lot of trips. Out of all of those trips, how many were bad? Hardly any.
Yeah.
There are some people that are pretty crazy when they drive or they don't pay attention.
Yeah.
But when you ramp it up against the total number of trips, and the total potential, statistically, it's unlikely to happen. When it does happen, it's a big financial burden, right?
Yeah.
So this is why for us, because we do so many trips, it's easier for us to take the risk of not taking deposits, of giving you parking included, etc. But when it's on a P2P model, and this is why we don't do P2P yet, it's not because you can't actually do it in the UAE. That is the key reason. But there are business logic reasons, right? Are people ready to give up their cars? And if they are ready to give up the cars, are these cars in good condition anyway? There's a provenance of that car. Is the car dangerous? Is it safe? Undercarriage damage, all the things that come with driving cars. So this is, it's the future for sure.
Yeah, it is the future. So I'm going to take it back from a business perspective. So if I'm flying into Dubai, and I'm going to be here in Dubai for probably a month, and so I like the concept. Can I get a better car, or can I get a car with the UDrive logo?
So we have cars that you can rent by the minute and by the day. We do not do long-term rental. There's business logic reasons for this. We will one day probably go into long-term rental, but it's not a priority for the business. There are too many people like you flying into Dubai that need a car for 1 minute, 1 hour, 3 days, 5 days, 7 days.
Okay.
That just don't want to talk to anybody. They just want to open it. Literally, just Google Map, click the car, go to the car, open it, and then just drive wherever you want.
Yeah.
And it's super easy.
And if need be, leave it there. And if I needed to get an Uber or whatever it is, that's the end of it.
You can leave it. And as long as you park somewhere that's allowed, like legally parking, you can't park on the pavement, for example, then it's not a problem for us. Like we don't mind. And if you refuel the car, like it's going empty because you're driving a lot, you just refuel it. It's on our card. So it's not on yours at all. So you don't pay for it.
Wow. So how's business?
Good. It's COVID, obviously, we'll probably get onto that conversation, but COVID wasn't a problem for our business model. It was a problem because we literally couldn't operate because we had this thing called a sanitization, which is like a curfew in the UAE for 2 months. So we went from generating thousands of trips a day to none overnight. So like effectively the business just went to sleep for a couple of months.
Welcome to the club. That happened to all of us during that time.
Yes.
It happened to all of us. Sustainability. So if the market were to switch from owning cars to fractional ownership, how many cars would that take off the road? Because you and I had a conversation in the coffee shop that morning, and you were giving me, this is the Future Innovation Summit that you spoke at the Future Innovation Summit when I was the MC. And you mentioned the number of cars that would be not off the road. Can you walk us through that business case on sustainability?
Yeah, look, let's take the example of so there are some actual research papers in Europe. It's a new industry in the Middle East, but in Europe there's some research papers that your average car sharing car takes 17 cars off the road.
Wow.
Now, obviously, there's some ums and ahs about how that does that, but the reality is that if you have a complex, let's say a building that has 400 people in it, right? And out of that, you have 50% of them have driver's licenses. And there's always a car available at the bottom of the basement for your trips.
Yeah.
Even out of the 250 people that would own a car, you take 30 of them, and they just don't go and buy a car in the end because they can at least get the transport needs they need. Then effectively one car has replaced 30. And you can do some complex modeling around it, but the logic is there because on our cars, we're having over, for example, in some cases, we will have between 4 to 8 trips a day in a car, depending on the car model, right? So in the end, that's 4 trips in a worst case scenario where they didn't own their car. Well, they weren't having a dedicated car to them. They took a car temporarily to use, and then somebody else temporarily used it, and somebody else temporarily used it. So, you know, you can have up to 120 different people use a single same car in a month.
Okay. I want to do a shout out real quick to a dear friend of mine, my pastor, Dr. Walter Parrish, he says this conversation is fascinating. So, hello, Dr. Parrish. Well, thanks for being a part of the show. So as we move forward, what do you see next in this so-called vertical? The vertical started from me going to an actual rental car place, renting a car, paying these exorbitant fees and all that. And now we're coming into fractional ownership. Now we're coming into the Airbnb of cars. Where do you see this headed?
You'll have 3 groups of people. You'll have the people who financed the vehicle.
Okay.
You'll have people that need access to that vehicle for whatever means.
Okay.
And in this case, we're the ones, you're the one who's actually driving it, but in Kareem, somebody else is driving you. And then you have the people in the middle, like us, like a marketplace that connects those 2 end parties together, right? Okay. So effectively, you have the user who doesn't want to pay for anything other than what they consume.
Okay.
And then you have somebody else who is taking big financing to buy the expensive asset. And then you have the people in the middle that are effectively dividing up into mini chunks based on the marketplace that they're serving.
Okay.
So that's the future. Now, if you look at it from a simplicity standpoint, that bleeds everything all the way into the future of the cars driving themselves around, right?
Oh yeah.
So because in the end, somebody still needs to buy the asset, and build it, right? So that's always going to exist until we're all teleporting ourselves, and then maybe you don't need to do that. But like, it's going to be the case. There's going to be an asset owner, and then there's going to be an asset user, and in the middle, there's someone providing technology, marketplaces, and stacking services on top of services on top of services that will help achieve that end goal of mobilizing someone, or people, or services, or goods, or whatever it is.
I read an article the other day that the RTA, that's the governing body in Dubai over transportation, is already looking into autonomous cars, taxis, and those kind of things. You get in, you put your destination in, and it takes you from point A to point B. Yeah. So this is where it's headed. The other question I wanted to ask you for branding. Now, I know the branding is great on the cars, but if I want to go out for dinner, I'm dressed and everything, I may not want to ride in a car that says UDrive on the side. Is it possible?
It's first of all, it's not in Dubai. It's not by choice.
Okay.
The per minute cars, our daily business, there is no branding on the car.
Okay.
And our business in every other city, there isn't any branding on the car unless it's for marketing purposes.
I see. Okay.
You know, there's identification opportunities and marketing opportunities when you do brand the car, and I think that is key to building a business. Otherwise, nobody will know you exist.
Yeah.
And you know, if 1,000 people are driving past a car every day, that's a lot of free advertising.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But no, like about 80% of our fleet, there is no branding on it. I mean, there might be like a little sticker on the back window or something like you'd have with a Navis rent-a-car. But in the end, the stigma's not attached to renting and leasing anymore like it used to be.
Okay.
Right? Like you don't own that Ferrari.
Yeah.
That's a problem. But that's a psychological problem, right?
Yeah.
I think the world's become more and more comfortable with the fact that you probably don't own anything anymore. You know, are you ashamed to say you rent a property?
Yeah. Well, you know,
really.
you got a point there. You got a point. I notice whenever I walk out on my deck and I see, because as I said, there was always a couple of Mustangs that were sitting over there, you know, and I said, you know, and I kept saying one day, I said, I got to try this. And then when I met you and I made the connection, I said, okay, cool.
Look, I've got in Dubai, the whole place is covered in buildings where the owner of the building's logo is on top of it.
Exactly. Exactly.
You live and you're renting from them.
Yeah, so
You know?
it's branding rights, which is always was big in New York. The Pan Am building, Pan Am didn't own that. That was their building. MetLife building, MetLife didn't own it. They paid for the branding rights as a result of that.
Yeah, and I think people are walking around with T-shirts with huge logos on them and stuff, and they're paying the privilege to have that logo on there. In the end, it boils down to UDrive is still a startup. We're going into scale up. We have aspirations that the brand will become so aligned with our customer base that they won't get in a car unless it has UDrive on it, for example.
Oh, okay.
Right. So it's like having a stamp of approval. Now, to do that, you have to really build an amazing customer experience, right? And so that's obviously what we have a vision one day that you'll get in a UDrive rather than a BMW.
Okay. So, yeah, that's gonna be.
We'll
that's coming. That's coming. So let's take it back to travel. Business people traveling. So I'm coming into an airport, and I need to get a car from point A to point B. And maybe I don't want to use a taxi. Maybe I just want to pick up a car because I got an early meeting. I wanted to do what I needed to do. Is UDrive available at DXB, Dubai?
No,
not yet.
Nope.
Okay, no plans.
Not for the foreseeable future.
Okay. Is that because of regulations, or is just too much red tape to try to navigate through? Because Dubai can be that way sometimes as well as business regulations. It can get kind of, okay, that's what it is. Okay, cool. I got that. Yeah, I got that. Okay, cool. Let's take our break now. We're going to take a break for a few minutes, and then we'll come back. So just hold tight.
At Strategy Focused Group, we not only upskill, we inspire, enable, educate, discuss, innovate, motivate, challenge, let us help you elevate your team. Email us at info@strategyfocusedgroup.com.
Okay, welcome back. So how long has UDrive been in business now?
2017
Okay.
was our first formal year. And prior to that, we were a traditional car rental company that had then digitized in 2016.
Okay, so you started out as a normal Hertz kind of approach. So
Old school way.
Old school way. So what was the trigger that said, you know what?
So it's a really simple story, but sometimes you just plug away, keep running the company the way you run the company. You're doing well, you're getting customers, and then one day internally, Hasib, it was funny. Hasib had someone that he needed to send to do a 30-minute job, and we didn't have any cars, so we were completely rented out. And so we had to go rent a car from someone else to go do this job. And he thought, but I just need a car for 30 minutes. And it was one of the light bulb moments. It's not like we're reinventing the wheel. It existed already in America. But when you face the problem yourself and you're like, that's stupid. There must be 1,000 other people just like that.
Yeah.
And you're going, well, we have the resources. So if you had that idea and just normal Joe on the street, it's a lot of energy to build that thing. But because we had hundreds of cars at that point, it was like, well, okay, let's just digitize them and see what happens. And then it just snowballed from that point onwards.
So once you digitize, you got to market that concept and get that out to so-called the consumers, and it just kind of picked up from there. People just picked it up a couple hours, and
it was a little bit naughty because we were very fortunate. We already had lots and lots of cars. We put lots of branding on them, and we stuck them right outside ITP's office and took up all their parking spaces. all the media showed up, and they had nowhere to park. And then the PR agency went in and just like gave them a good old like explanation about how it works and
Oh,
what
that
it's
was
doing.
smooth.
And then
That was
it
smooth.
went viral. I mean, you can do that only so many times, and then eventually,
Yeah.
But it worked. And of course, back then, car sharing didn't exist at all. Wasn't available. You have to do what you have to do when you're a startup, right? So some of that's like viral campaigns.
Yeah. Tell me about doing what you have to do, because you really have to do what you have to do. So marketing played a huge role in that, because if you came up with a new concept, we have to market that out to the potential consumers. What was the marketing approach? So you did that, and that created a buzz because the press came down. And walk us through that.
Yeah. So the press came down. They interviewed. It went into the media. Then it went across the GCC. It got attention from people we didn't want it to get attention from. We had a few conversations. I did make a few changes to our business model. Resolved all that, and then it was all fine. But in the end, so the thing is, it's a viral product.
Yeah.
So people already, if you've ever rented a car and you tell them, oh, by the way, when you rent from UDrive, there's no deposit, fuel's included, parking's included, their brains explode. They can't conceptualize this concept.
They think it's a scam.
Well, yeah, it sounds like one, but then when you download the app and you see the cars and you click it, and then you realize, and you're like, oh, it really is. So if you think about it, apart from it, it being one of these things, it sounds too good to be true, but then it turns out to be true.
Yeah. It
almost invariably makes everybody a marketing asset for us.
Yeah.
And the service isn't perfect. It's very, very difficult. It's a very operational business, so we have to deal with a lot of operational issues. But in the end, it's a viral product. Like we didn't spend any money on any marketing up until 5 months ago, because it was viral. We had thousands and thousands of customers registering every single month. Our major issue is that we don't have enough cars and we have too many customers. So, okay, I don't want it to sound like we're like embellishing ourselves, but
I understand.
The product is a very physical product, so it has to be close to where the customer is enough.
Yeah.
That the customer's willing to walk to it, right? And this is important because in Dubai you can't really walk like very, very far, and if you can, in the heat, it's not the best thing to be doing. So, our vision and our investments now, the money we raise and the money we are raising goes into technology to help make it a better customer experience.
Okay.
So, we didn't have to. And the only reason we started spending money on advertising was literally to figure out what the cost of acquisition would be to put in our pitch decks, because investors kept asking us.
Yeah.
Like, well, we don't have a cost of acquisition in a matured market.
Okay.
And new markets, this is what the cost of acquisition would be. So it was a requirement to get money, that we had to show how we would spend money, because we don't know how to spend money, because we never had to spend money.
Okay. So, that's a lesson within itself, because you're talking private equity. You get at a certain point, then you got to go out and raise money. You've got to go out. You talk about a pitch deck. Pitch deck this is what's going to show. You're going to walk me through where we are, where we're headed, all those kinds of things. What advice would you give to someone that's getting to that stage, and they're looking to, we need financing, and we need financing beyond just what's in our pockets, and we've got to go external to do that? What advice would you give them, having gone through? You just got a big round back in March. Was it in March or April?
Yeah, we announced it in February. We announced we had the funding. The funding had already, we had actually closed that back in October, November. But we waited for a few key things to happen inside the business for like scalability before we actually announced it.
Okay.
And so we're about to make some big announcements, and hopefully in the next 2 to 3 months.
Okay.
About other raising and opportunities.
So, what advice would you give someone at this stage that's ready to go out into the PE private equity market to get funding? Any advice would you give them? If you even mentioned something as simple as a pitch deck. I know what that is. You know what that is. But for someone who's starting, what is a pitch deck?
A pitch deck should be a short form document that explains what you're doing and how you're doing it and where you're going to be going, to people that have money and believe that you're going to take their money and then quadruple it or times it by 10. right? So it almost has to be built in a way where they can flow through your. Imagine being in your business, but in in a 5-minute read, effectively, right?
Okay.
And at the end of it, you ask them for something, and invariably it's money you're asking for, and then you're telling them we'll give you more money back after you give us the money. So in raising money, though, it's almost raising money is about viral effects and network. So if you don't have a network, your life is going to be a lot harder. If you have a very viral product that will get picked up by the media and by investor groups and stuff, and is considered a hot ticket, then you'll find it easier to raise money as well. Because they'll effectively come chasing you. But to get to that point, you have to build the story that comes out like a viral or attractive product, which is the pitch deck, and your own sales pitch as well itself. So this is a skill set, and if you don't have it, find someone that does, is my first suggestion. And that normally comes from your angel network. And if you have self-funded your business, the only thing I would say, and it's exactly what I said to Hassan when I first met him, is that, look, it's either you and yourself, or it's you and many friends. And those many friends make up a lot of other networks, and what I call string pulling. So it's better to have a few good angels invested in you, because their weight on top of you helps you make you more believable and more opportunistic.
Okay, cool. So as we begin to close, what has been an important influence that shaped your leadership capabilities?
And I would say my whole life experience was based on mistakes, like making the mistakes and then not repeating them. So, your life is full of things you do right and things you do wrong. If you do it wrong, don't repeat it. That means you've less chance of doing it wrong again in the future, because you only do it the right way. So the biggest development for me was just with the previous opportunities I had was, we had very, very fast turnaround times for building product, ideation, building, acquiring customers, acquiring customers on both sides of the buy-sell side of things, and then executing and building, really going from idea to execution. And we did that on hundreds and hundreds of times, because it was an events company that did B2B meetings. And that company was a machine. I mean, it knocked out a lot of economic value for a lot of people. I don't think people understand the true value that platform was creating. It's just, it was a very a very human-based platform. So it required humans to really ideate and build and execute. And obviously we tried to digitize, but it was a little bit too late.
That wasn't the Sabre. That wasn't the Sabre, correct?
That was correct. Nasaba.
My first client.
There you go on. Yes.
My first client when I started my business. First client. Yes, you guys were.
No, we've had a lot of first clients come through Nasaba, because we had our HR events and stuff. And I think the key to what we were doing there was we were helping make it easier for people that had a good idea to meet people that might buy that idea.
That's exactly
right. And and when you go to when you were using the platform, where you go into the events, you would test if it would work or not, so you can keep wasting your time or investing your time. Or you decide, this is not going to work out. Nobody wants it. I'm just going to go do something else, right? That's always a good thing when you're an entrepreneur, to know whether you can have a belief, but if it really doesn't have, if you're trying to make a product that doesn't have a fit, what they call market product fit, then you're basically doing an uphill battle until the market does build out.
All the business cards because I spoke at all of your events, and at that time I was a CEO for a great place to work. But all those business cards, a large portion of those turned into clients once I stepped out and put my shingle out.
And this is the same thing. Like when people ask about entrepreneurship, I'm like, network. Always be networking. It doesn't have to be physical. You don't have to go out and drink and go to meals and stuff. You can build relationships with people where it's literally just giving something to them. Not free product. It can be free product, but give them some knowledge, give them some information. And that was one of the things I did learn from Nasaba, is that we gave before we took.
Okay.
We always try to like provide that added value, and I've learned that experience from there, and I bleed it into everything I do. You know, I only have so many hours in the day, but I try to help people.
Yeah.
And if I can't help them directly, I can give them a direction on which way to go.
Connecting.
Right, which will pay off later. It may not pay off instantly, but it will pay off later if they put the energy into it.
Okay. So what one person, if you could think of one person who was instrumental in your guidance and your development over the years?
I would definitely say Scott from NASABA, the chairman of NASABA, because I spent 15 years there. So
Really?
like in a business context, so we're not talking about like families and friends and stuff, we're talking about business, right? I was a tech guy. I graduated in computer animation and games programming, and within a year I became a hardcore sales guy. So like, you know, miracles can happen. I mean, obviously there's probably some slight DNA that in my body that allows me to be a bit of a salesman.
Allows you to make that transition. Yeah,
exactly. But like, you know, I was a you know, traditional British kid, you know, arrogant, cocky, whatever, no problem. Got the opportunity to sell, thought I could do this. How hard can it be? Realize how hard it can be. Realize that actually there are some skills that you need to learn. You're not born with them. But then I think that was it for me. I mean, I think the foundation years are quite important in your first job. So if you choose a job that you don't believe you'll be successful at, then you'll just get into a rut, and that rut is very difficult to get out of. I was just very, very fortunate to have had this dream that I wanted to work in the basement company, and the first office of NASABA was actually a basement of a real estate agency. And so it just tied in. It wasn't tech. I wasn't doing anything in tech, but it had to be a basement company because I was in the tech dream, right? It wasn't a garage, and you know, we don't have really garages in Europe. So.
Wow, that's absolutely amazing, because you know the people that you had at that particular time, they're all doing great things now.
I know, and look, you know, the thing is, it wasn't easy. We made mistakes. Like every company makes mistakes. Nothing's perfect. Otherwise, there'd be no HR people, would there? So,
exactly.
But like in the end, I think those that reflect on their experience, good or bad, and every company has it, will, if they do it in the right way, they would have realized they gained a lot from it. And to be honest, no matter what, even if you gain something, but you don't want to remember the positive sides, that makes you a better person for how you want to run your own business and how you don't want to run it, for example. So it adds value no matter what you do. It depends on how you spin it, right? If you want to be a victim, you can be a victim for the rest of your life.
Nick, thank you so much, man, for making time for us. I know you're at work now, but I really appreciate it. And I'll see you in a few weeks.
See you soon.
Give you a call, and you know, we'll hang out a little bit. Okay.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being a guest. Hang on for a minute before we're going to close that, but just hang on for a second.
Sure.